Hello and welcome to the Gooner Talk, back again with you guys for another episode of what is the Arsenal Transfer Show. Join you every morning at 8 a.m. UK time. Hope you're doing good. Hope you're doing well. Thank you as always for making this a part of your morning routines. It is very much appreciated. I hope that you've had a good week so far and it started very well for you because it is a big one, of course, with it being the end of the transfer window and it ending with a match against Manchester United on Sunday. So big things to come and hopefully some really exciting times ahead as well. Good morning to those joining us in the chat box. Black Shine, good morning to you, to Lynn, to Jimbo, to Carl, good morning to Richard, Biggest. We've got Shari, we've got Lynn, Dave, Clock Orange, Zlatko, Martin, Vivian, Jose, Olawale as well. Plenty of our regulars in the chat box I can see, and some irregular people as well. Derek, good morning to you, to Trader, Mike, of course, and yes, everybody else joining us in the chat box that I can see too. Fantastic to see so many of you. As always, do drop a like, subscribe if you're new, and of course, if you are indeed interested in getting more information about when the shows are dropping, turn those notifications on by hitting that little bell notification, and hopefully, if YouTube's not having a bit of a moment, it might tell you when indeed we do go live. So yeah, throughout the season, I'm looking forward to bringing you more evening shows. Transfer window's been hectic and crazy, but hopefully we'll have more for you as the weeks go on and into the season, with regular guests, regular podcasts, things like that. But the 8 a.m. show sticking around as per for the foreseeable future. Right then, let's crack on with today's stories, shall we? First of all, Arsenal's under 21 sadly losing at Nottingham Forest. Mehmet Ali, I feel as though it's a big season for him, I think, Mehmet Ali. You know, Arsenal's under 21s, what they might do in the EFL Trophy, of course. They had a good result against Swindon the other day. Jack Wilshere's got a lot of respect around his name, and what he's done with the under-18s is really good. And there's pressure, I think, on Mehmet Ali to deliver something good this season with the under-21s, with the caveat, of course, now that there's players like Ethan Nwaneri there, and Mario Koja-Dubry's still there, Raul Waters, Lino Souza. These players need to take another level to their game, and obviously I think there's going to be some pressure on Mehmet Ali to deliver this season. So yeah, I'm hoping at least that what we see is some improvement in the team going forwards, and in this game against Nottingham Forest, sadly, it couldn't be delivered. Nicolas Pepe, constant rumours surrounding him. There is hope that his future will indeed be resolved before the end of the summer. German clubs now, according to reports in Deutschland, are suggesting that he indeed could be moving to the Bundesliga, which would be a very interesting move, I think, for him. Who those clubs are, we still are awaiting the identity of, but those reports in Germany claiming that indeed Pepe is of interest to some German sides. Saudi Arabian teams, as well as we know, also interested in Nicolas Pepe. But still no resolution at the moment, still nothing to suggest that Pepe will be leaving imminently, but just interest right now. We heard about those Besiktas rumours. They've gone very, very quiet. Saudi rumours as well have gone a little bit quiet, but they are being mentioned. But now German clubs are apparently interested also in Nicolas Pepe. Emile Smith Rowe is indeed, it seems, on the list of players that Chelsea are considering to add to their team before the end of the season. We know that they've been linked with a number of attacking players, Rafinha being one of those as well. But Smith Rowe is on the list of players Chelsea are potentially keen on. I find this story concerning, to be honest. I find this a very, very difficult one to discuss. I wrote a piece about the hypocrisy that I myself feel about this deal, because whilst I have sat here and justified the likes of Kieran Tierney moving on, because I feel like that's the right thing, he's not getting minutes, bring him back next summer, and then the value is going to go up, or maybe he can get back into the team, you know. And I've said before to people, like, if players aren't playing, you know, and they're not getting into the team, and Smith Rowe's not in my best Arsenal 11, you know, there are players like Fabio Vieira and Trossard potentially ahead of him. It's really difficult to see where the minutes are going to go. But the fact of the matter is, you can't sell Smith Rowe. I just feel as though you cannot. Like, it's a different scenario. It's a different player. He's come through the academy. He's been such a key part for us in the last few years. He effectively, there's a good argument that the man, you know, had a really, really important factor in saving Arteta during that season where we did still finish 8th, but that Boxing Day performance against Chelsea and went on to be a crucial part of that team throughout the course of the rest of the season and then into the following season as well. He was so key in keeping Arteta, arguably in a job if indeed that the results had got worse, that then indeed he wouldn't have been. So Arteta gave him the faith to get him back into the team, but my goodness, did Smith Rowe do such a huge bit of work in keeping Arsenal on the straight and narrow and moving towards progression. Look, it would be very, very difficult to have any kind of discussion not critical about Arsenal if they let Smith Rowe go. It would be very testing indeed. So I'm hoping he stays. I'm hoping he gets into the Arsenal squad. I'm hoping he gets minutes. I've been talking, for some time about the fact that when the Carabao Cup and the Champions League games come, there's going to be minutes for Smith Rowe. But yeah, seeing him leave before the end of the window, I think would be terrible. Really, really terrible. So yeah, let's wait and see what happens. Speaking of players and key players in the squad leaving, Gabriel Magalhaes remains, as far as I'm aware, not for sale. But questions seem to continue lingering around the potential for Gabriel to leave the club. Now, there are rumours, I think, that the club, the Saudi Arabian side, Al Ittihad, are looking at other defenders because Arsenal have been very headstrong in their approach regarding Gabriel, saying he's not for sale. But it's so interesting, isn't it, that, of course, that he's not in the team. And there's continual rumours and suggestions that there's more to this story than meets the eye. There's conflicting reports. I've seen, colleagues of mine, contemporaries of mine suggest that they feel as though there's more to this story than meets the eye. And it's really difficult to suggest that this would be a move that makes any sense. We cannot let him go. He is really, really important. He needs to start the next game against Manchester United in the usual back four as we move and shift, and change the team around. But I hate seeing these rumours. I'm almost kind of longing for the window to close at this point, and hoping that indeed these rumours don't turn into anything more than they are right now, which is hopefully just rumours. And lastly, to discuss is that kind of linked to Gabriel is that Sammy Motbell reporting yesterday that, Marc Guehi is being considered as a potential replacement for the not for sale Gabriel. And if he's not for sale, where are these leaks coming from as potential replacements? I don't think there's any player on the planet really that is accessible between now and the end of the window that can replace Gabriel. And I was told, on the opening day of the season against Nottingham Forest when he was dropped, that it was purely tactical. That's what I was told by someone who is very connected within the club, that it was purely tactical as to why Gabriel was indeed dropped for that game against Forest. So I don't really get where the idea that Marc Guehi, who is a good player, don't get me wrong, he's a good player, but he's just not the same level as Gabriel. And because of that, it would make little to no sense to swap them. And the type of figure that I would accept for Gabriel, I've seen reports of, I think Fabrizio said £200 million would not be enough to get Gabriel out the door. So yeah, very, very difficult indeed. And I'm just kind of longing for this window to close and hoping that Arsenal can bring somebody in, of which, sadly, this morning, if you're tuning in hoping to see some links to some new players, I'm sad to say that I have nothing. I have nothing for you. There is no players being linked really to Arsenal as forward signings, as additional defensive signings. I know Guehi, we've mentioned here as a replacement for Gabriel, but certainly not a player that we're looking to bring in if Gabriel stays. But at the moment, there is no sign of something. Now, that doesn't mean, of course, that nothing's happening. We know that Arsenal like to do their business as quietly as possible, and we could see something dramatically change in, think about when the Urian Timber story popped up. Think about when the Fabio Vieira story popped up. Think about when the Matt Ryan thing happened. There's always potential that something can pop out of nowhere and that this week could be very chaotic indeed. But let's wait and see. We'll be back tomorrow morning, of course, to bring you anything that happens during the day and anything that we might expect to happen. But things are, I'm told, happening behind the scenes, but we are still very much quiet on names, and that's the state of play where we are right now. Right, let's move to part 2 and your questions right after this. Right, let's jump into the chat box, shall we? And tackle some of your thoughts and feelings, queries, theories, questions, all that lovely stuff. And try and make sense of some of the questions that we might have. It's going to be a tough one, but we're going to take some of them because I can already see some tough questions are coming in. I can see Zungtas says, according to the Times, Arsenal are willing to sell Emile Smith Rowe. Let's have a quick check and see if we can find this news story from the Times. It'd be great if I could find it. The Times. Have a quick check. So I can't find this story yet. So if you want to drop me a link, if someone wants to drop me a DM, I will try and address that story. But at the moment, I can't seem to find it. Oh, hold on. Simon Phillips reported on his Substack that Chelsea are way up a move for Smith Rowe. According to the Times, here we go. Is there anything in this story to suggest that it might be? Let me just see if I can access the article. I know this is really powerful viewing, but let me just see if I can find the bit about Smith Rowe. That'd be great. I don't think I can, sadly. I think it's behind a paywall, but I can't read it. But apparently the Times are reporting that, but I can't confirm that because I can't read the bit because it's behind a paywall. So sadly, I can't get to that bit. Let's go to Henke Ho, who says, do you have any player you want at Arsenal before the window closes? Yeah, I'd love to see Mohamed Simakan or Benjamin Henrichs brought in. Either one of those two, I think, would be really good additions to the squad between now and the end of the window. In a forward sense, what forwards are available? Nico Williams is obviously a player I like. Pedro Gonçalves is another one I like. I'd love to see Arsenal bring in a forward player, but I just can't see it happening. The necessity for me is we have to bring in a defender, in my opinion. I think the forward play, if the right player isn't there, I don't mind waiting for January for a forward. I think we have enough forwards to last us until at least January, but I would love to see us bring someone in then. It's really important that we do like we did last season, of course. But this summer, for me, we have to make sure we bring in a defender. Who knows, though, really? It's a lot of money. It depends what, Cody, a lot of money is. It depends how much money is being offered for Gabriel or Smith Rowe, if indeed one of those teams were to come into it. Roy says, is Arteta a bit binary in his man management? Binary in what way? Binary suggests it's one or the other. And I think, ironically, he's actually trying to change more to become far less binary, Roy. So I guess it depends on what you mean. But I think he's got certainly more than one. He showed that he's got more than one strategy this season. We've used a different formation against Man City that we have in the opening 3 games. So I think there are differences to the way in which he wants to set up the team. Mike says, do you think it is Gabriel expressing a desire to go rather than originating from the club? That's certainly not what I've heard. All I've heard from Gabriel's, side of things is that, he's very committed to Arsenal. He's happy at Arsenal. That's why he signed a brand new contract only a few months ago. So no, I've not heard anything to suggest that's the case. Mike, to be honest. MJ10 said, I did say that the only players who will fetch a big sum are the ones that we don't want to go. I'm fairly confident Gabriel will stay and people are taking advantage of him being on the bench. I think that's probably where I lie as well, MJ10, yes. Clock Orange says, Tom, is it because Arteta is looking to play 3 at the back and wants a more technical left back than Gabriel? If that was the case, I don't know why he signed him, because Gabriel was his first investment, really. As a player, that £25 million investment that we made in Gabriel. I don't know why we would sign a player, or he would sign a player that he didn't think was technical enough anyway. So I don't think that's the reason. I think he rates Gabriel. I think he thinks it's going to be an important part of his squad this season. And I think we just haven't seen the formation yet that's accommodated him. And I think we should see that the weekend. If we don't see Gabriel and Havertz on the bench at the weekend, then I've got some serious questions, because I'm moving in a direction where I'm like, well, we're going against Man United. So obviously Partey and Rice will go in midfield with Ødegaard. Then you'd play White, Saliba, Gabriel, Zinchenko, or Kivior at left back if you want to go with the full back 4 type of situation. But I can't, for the life of me, come up with a theory as to why he wouldn't do that. It wouldn't make any sense for anything else. MM says, is it me or are we losing depth as the window comes to a close? Well, not yet, is the answer. I know people think that Kieran Tierney moving out is losing depth. And, by the definition of numbers and counting it is. But, for me, we have a lot of players in that left back role. He doesn't play in the system and the style that Arteta wants. And wasn't going to play enough minutes. So I don't mind Kieran Tierney leaving on loan. I know a lot of people don't agree with that, and that's fine. You know, I personally see the benefit of that loan deal, but I don't think that it's justifiable to allow Smith Rowe and Gabriel to leave this late on in the window. Mark says, Tom, do you think Arteta lacks the same management skill to keep players feeling wanted like Pep does? I don't think that's to do with Arteta, Mark, to be honest. You know, the benefit that Pep has right now is the Man City are the best club in the world that are winning trophies hand over fist. You know, you can keep players happy because they're going to be winning things. Arteta needs to prove that Arsenal is a club that are going to be doing that this season. So I think that's the difference, and that's why he perhaps cannot do it in the same way that Pep can right now. Derek says, Tom, Gabriel and Smith Rowe will be sold. I've seen these scenarios before. No smoke without fire. I can't lie. I'm now worried about this season. Zero noise about incomings. Derek, I hope that you're wrong, my friend. I hope that you're wrong. Pavel says, I hope Arteta won't do this to him. It'll be too much for the fans. I agree. I really hope Arteta doesn't do it to himself in some ways. And also, you know, if he leaves, I feel as though, you know, he said things like, I think in the press conference he did before the Fulham game, he said something along the lines of what the club do is, you know, down to them. You know, I feel as though as manager, he's got to take some responsibility. It can't just be pointed at the club to say, well, the club wanted to sell him. We needed the money. You know, if you're the manager, I think you've got to pull your weight and, you know, put your foot down and say, no, we cannot sell this player. I need this player. And if he's going to go, you better be signing me a blooming good player in replacement if he is indeed going to go. Darren says, will Arsenal regret not signing Kudus? I think so, but let's wait and see. Vanaduti says, didn't Arteta say Gabriel knows why he's not playing? This seems to be a great comment to put the rumours to bed. Yeah, he knows why he's not playing because, in my opinion, I agree with Arteta and I believe Arteta, is that tactically he's trying something different to start the season, you know, to kind of in prep for different moments throughout the rest of the campaign. I think he knows that's the reason. I think that is a positive one. Benji says, if we were to target Marcus Edwards as a right-wing backup, would you be happy with that? I like Marcus Edwards. Even though he's a former Spurs player, I've been very impressed with what he's done at Sporting. So I think bringing him into the team would be a pretty good addition, to be honest. You know, I like Marcus Edwards. I think he'd provide some real quality to the depth of that forward line. Gooner Jake says, Tom, in my opinion, I think if we was to sell Gabby, he would have been an unused sub in all of the games. You could see the passion when he came off the bench against Palace. Do you think it's simply a fallout? I don't think there's a fallout at all, Jake, to be honest at all. No, I'd be very surprised if that was the case. I'm not saying categorically 100% it's not because I don't know for a fact, but I'd be very, very surprised if there's been a fallout between the player and the manager. A1 says, with what Arteta is trying to do with Havertz, is Jesus not better suited to that role if Eddie is playing centre forward? No, I don't think so. I don't think I'd play Jesus in the role that Havertz is currently occupying alongside Ødegaard. I think, if anything, Jesus is kind of an option to rotate with Saka. If you want to give Saka a bit of a rest, you can bring Jesus into that right flank and play Eddie through the middle if you want to do that. So, no, not for me right now. I wouldn't be playing Jesus where Havertz is. I would be playing Vieira, though, based upon what I saw in the last game. I'd love to see more of Vieira this season if that's what he's going to produce in his performances. I always feel like I've got to keep an eye on the bottom of the chat just in case my microphone starts to go really strange again. But hopefully it won't. Ginger Gooner says, Timber being injured seems to have a few people worried. Do we need to buy a player or loan a player? I'd buy a player. Yeah, I think you need to buy someone good enough that can compete even when Timber comes back. So Simbakan, I think, would be the perfect option for me. But it doesn't seem that that's going to be happening. I think I saw a report saying from RB Leipzig that they wouldn't be letting him leave at this stage of the window either. Nick says, we really need to keep Gabriel and Smith Rowe. If they go, it's a throwback to the Wenger years when it always felt like we'd go one step forward and two steps back. You have to keep your quality players. Absolutely. The thing with Smith Rowe is, right, and I said I wrote about this yesterday, the piece you can read on football.london, is that, like, I feel like such a hypocrite with the Smith Rowe thing. And the reason why I feel like a hypocrite is because if I was to pick my best Arsenal 11, Smith Rowe's not in the team, right? My best Arsenal 11 is, at the moment, Rayerdale, because I think genuinely either of them could pick. I'd pick Ramsdale right now, but, you know, but I tell you what, after that international break, just keep your eye on David Raya and how many minutes he starts to get. But Ramsdale, Ben White, Saliba, Gabriel, Zinchenko, Partey and Rice, Ødegaard, Saka, Jesus, and Martinelli. That's my best Arsenal team. You know, that's what I would say is my best Arsenal team. You know, forget form, forget fitness right now. If you're just picking a team on paper, for me, that's the best team. And then I start thinking, where does Smith Rowe come in? Well, if Jesus isn't fit, and Nketiah has done a great job, and for me has shown me that he can play that centre forward role and score. So if Jesus isn't playing, and Nketiah's in, you know, if Zinchenko's not playing, Timber's in. If White's not playing, Timber's in. You know, Timber's very close to that forward line. If you can't pick Martinelli, I'm picking Trossard's, not Smith Rowe. You know? And I feel as though if Rice isn't there or Partey's not there, then at the moment, you know, Vieira has shown that in that last game he's very good. I think the one player that I look to if you are going to play Smith Rowe, it's probably Ødegaard. You know, if Ødegaard's not there and you take him out of the team, it's probably Smith Rowe coming into that position there for me. And I think that Arteta might probably play Vieira, to be honest, if he was given the choice. And that for me means that Smith Rowe is one player or maybe two away from getting into Arsenal's best team. But if we're going to be playing our best team week in, week out and that sort of thing, because people don't like apparently change too much or too much rotation based upon how I've seen the reactions to the first 3 games of the season, then it's difficult to see where Smith Rowe is going to get enough minutes to justify his own view. And you got to put yourself into the shoes of Smith Rowe. If Smith Rowe's not playing week in, week out at that age, can you blame him for wanting to go? And then you got the contradiction of saying, well, can you point the finger at Arteta for not starting him in enough games? Because if you want to start him, you've then got to drop Ødegaard or Martinelli or Trossard or, you know, Rice or Partey to try and get him into the team in some way on a regular enough occasion that his mind changes to wanting to stay at the club. And that's the contradiction, is that I don't know if we can offer Smith Rowe enough minutes to convince him that for the rest of his career, and that's what we're talking about here. If we're saying that Smith Rowe cannot be sold, we have to be saying that what we need to do is say that Smith Rowe is going to get into this team regularly enough. Let's try that at 8 a.m. every day. Regularly enough that he's not going to have any ambitions to leave to play week in, week out somewhere else. Does that make sense? I feel like it makes sense. That's the contradiction that I have, is that you've got to try and justify Smith Rowe staying, which I think is easy because he's good enough to be depth. But what if Smith Rowe doesn't want to be depth? Well, I can't guarantee, if I'm Arteta, Smith Rowe enough starts in this squad, even with the benefit of Cups and Champions Leagues, to make me think that he would want to stay, you know? And in that case, if he then wants to go, what's the price tag? You know, how much are you then willing to sell him for? And how much a club's going to be willing to pay for a player that, like Tierney, has barely played. Yes, he's homegrown in this case, and has consistent injury concerns. That's the thing. It's like, it's really difficult. I'm not going to place a price on his head from my perspective because I genuinely don't know what the answer is. I don't know what the answer is in terms of Smith Rowe's price tag. I'd rather not think about it, to be honest, because like I know that it's easy for me to say, oh, I'd want 100 million. No one's paying 100 million for Smith Rowe. Let's be real. You know, no one's going to pay that. Are people going to pay 80 million? I don't think so. Are people going to pay 60 million? I don't think so. It's really hard. You know, it's really hard. But let's wait and see. I think he's worth, I'm not saying that he's not worth more than 60 million in my head. I think he is. You know, I wouldn't want to accept 60 million personally for Smith Rowe. I think that's underselling his talent. But I don't think anyone would pay that right now. So that's the confliction. That's where my head's kind of at with Smith Rowe. Dan says, would you take a Smith Rowe Mudryk swap deal? And this is something that I've seen a couple of people talk about before. Now, Mudryk, like Havertz, struggled at Chelsea. Who's to say that Mudryk wouldn't also struggle at Arsenal? I don't know. Who's to say that it wouldn't take time? Who's to say that, you know, anything about that deal makes sense for us? Because Mudryk is a left-sided player, right? And I don't start Mudryk over Martinelli. I don't start Mudryk over Trossard. So we're in the same situation as we find ourselves in with Smith Rowe. If I swap Smith Rowe for somebody, anybody, it's got to be someone good enough to start, in my opinion. And Mudryk isn't good enough to start for Arsenal. I like Mudryk. I liked him at Shakhtar Donetsk. I really was keen on him joining Arsenal at the time. I thought he was a talent. I still think he's a talent. I think that in the right environment, he might flourish. And I don't know if Chelsea is that environment. I think he might end up moving to the continent. I can see him at somewhere like Milan and doing really, really well, maybe. But I think with somebody like Mudryk coming to Arsenal, he doesn't start for us. So it wouldn't be justifiable to make that switch because it doesn't change the situation. And I'd rather have Smith Rowe, who can play in more positions than Mudryk, I'd rather have Smith Rowe, who can play in more positions than Mudryk can. So it makes sense. Smith Rowe can play at 10. I think there's scope for him to play attacking 8. He can obviously play a wide left playmaker role. He could arguably play as a false 9, whereas Mudryk is a left winger. That is what Mudryk is. So despite these suggestions that could be a deal that Arsenal would be open to, I can't see that being, and selling him to Chelsea anyway is just not okay. Like, I'm just not okay with it. Like, just to get that out there, selling to Chelsea is a no-go. Like, I don't mind selling like some players leaving to Chelsea, if it was Nicolas Pepe, I'm not saying outright you cannot sell to Chelsea ever. But what I am saying is that Smith Rowe is a solid no. And you just don't do that. And you just don't allow that to happen. I think it erodes trust as well, in the club, in the manager, in Edu. If they're smart, they wouldn't do this. I'm hoping that it's just rumors, kind of not malicious rumors, but just rumors just for the sake of rumors, and that there is no intention from up high to allow that type of deal. Because I tell you what, for all the good and all the praise I've handed to Arteta and Edu, and I think the club have done some really good business, and I think the recruitment's on the right track, and I think the fact that we're making sales that are better. I left Balogun in the headline because I wanted to actually talk about Balogun as well. Balogun, there's been conflicting reports about his price tag. Fabrizio Romano says 40 million euros. Fabrice Hawkins came out yesterday again on RMC Sport, who are very well connected, and said 45 million euros. So we're still kind of waiting on what the official price tag is. I told you a week ago, I heard it was about 38 million pounds. The 40 million euro suggests it's about 34. The 45 million euro suggests it is indeed that 38. So I think it depends on what kind of final price tag we start hearing at the time. But that's I heard 38 million quid around that kind of figure. But it's difficult to see when we've done so well in proving like how much we're getting in sales. We might break 100 million in sales this summer, which would be amazing. And a real like stamp for Edu. We broke 100 million in sales. Fair blooming play. Like really, really well done. If we break that 100 million, it's great. And I think the players that we brought in, Rice, Timber, Raya, and I'm interested to see what happens with Havertz. I know the jury's very much out with Havertz right now. But I'm intrigued to see if, throughout the course of the season, he does come good and starts putting some people to shame. I really hope so. But if we were to sell Smith Rowe, I think it does erode some trust. It does erode some of the good work that's been done, because you've got to work Smith Rowe into the plans. You've got to give that kid a chance, because there is no doubt the quality that he's got. So stop leaving him on the bench. Give him opportunities. You could have taken Martinelli off against Fulham and given Smith Rowe a chance in that game, even when we needed a goal. I just feel as though he's not being given the opportunity. I think if, I've said before and defended Arteta in terms of substitutions at times, if there is one player that I don't agree with the treatment of in terms of minutes, it is Smith Rowe. I do think he needs to be given more opportunities. So, yeah, for those that think I don't criticise Arteta, there you go. There's a criticism. I think he should be given more chances to Smith Rowe. Wesbo says, I was under the understanding that Smith Rowe was being moulded into being Odegaard's replacement, but maybe that's not the case now. Sad if he leaves, and he does, it's imperative, and if he does, it's imperative that it's not to a rival. The idea of Smith Rowe leaving on loan, which has not been talked about, not been reported, not been discussed. So don't assume that this is a story. This is me speculating and like theorizing. If he was to leave on loan and he extended his contract by a year and he went to like the continent for a year and played for a full season, I think that would be really beneficial for Smith Rowe. The problem with that is that I think we need him for depth. If we have a couple of injuries, all of a sudden he's playing, but that is, it's relevant only if we have those injuries. the idea of Smith Rowe going for a season away on loan, I think would be really good for him as an individual. If I'm thinking unselfishly, if I'm thinking from an Arsenal perspective, I want to keep him. Emile Smith loan, and I think that would be a really good move for him, and he would probably be open to it as well, to get regular game time at a really good club away from England, perhaps. That'd be a really good move if we could extend his contract. But I just think from a selfish point of view, we need to keep him. We need to make sure we keep hold of him. So if I'm Brighton, by the way, after all the money that I've got, and I think I actually saw Brighton mentioned in the chat box. Where was that comment? I'll give them credit. Where was it? Someone said about Cisco having, here it is, here to there. It says Smith Rowe to Brighton on loan as Cisco has had knee surgery. Would be ideal if he isn't playing. Now, they wouldn't do that deal. I'll tell you what, they wouldn't do that deal. The reason why is because they were really burned by the Levi Colwill situation. They got him on loan. He did brilliantly. They developed a player for Chelsea, and he went back to Chelsea worth a lot more money than he was. And Brighton would not want to take, in my opinion. I don't think anyway. Same as Lokonga, I think as well. I don't think Brighton would want to take a player on loan without an option or an obligation to buy in that contract. Brighton want control. Brighton don't want to develop somebody else's player. It's more important to them to make money and to improve their own assets. So it'd be very surprising to me if Brighton signed anybody on loan of that caliber again after what happened with Colwill. So I could imagine Brighton using the money that they've built to send in a massive bid for Smith Rowe. I think that if I was in charge of Brighton, I don't want to force this into the universe, but if I was Brighton, I'd be putting in a massive bid for Smith Rowe. So I think it would be a great move for him, a great move for them, and he fits straight into their kind of setup of attacking players. Imagine him in the forward line with Ferguson and Mitoma and players like that, and Baleba who's coming in midfield. So if I was them, that's what I would do. I don't want them to do it, but I think that move makes a lot of sense for Brian. Tom says, can we include a recall clause for a Smith Rowe season-long loan in case of an injury? That's not a bad idea. It's not even something I thought about, Tom. So if you were to send him on loan for a year and you had a recall clause in January, that certainly could be something. And Arsenal do tend to include recall clauses into their loans. They've done it, as far as I'm aware, with pretty much all of them. I think Charlie Patino has a recall clause in his loan deal to where's he gone? Swansea. So I'm pretty sure that would be very, very feasible indeed. Benji says, loan into Brighton, Ajax, or even Brentford. As an absolute worst case scenario, he would shine at any of those clubs. I think that the bottom line is that you keep him. I think that's got to be the bottom line. You can't sell Smith Rowe. You just can't. I know we spent a lot of time this morning on the Smith Rowe thing, but I think it is a big trending topic right now. But if you are Arsenal, you just can't let him go. You got to find a way of getting him into the team and playing him as much as feasibly possible. He doesn't start right now, but you've got to start giving him more minutes. You've got to start giving him more minutes because you can't leave this kid of that amount of talent just sitting on the bench week in, week out. And yes, the cup games and the Champions League are coming, but I have a fear that when the Champions League comes around, he's still not going to be in the team. That's my worry. So I'm hoping that doesn't turn out to be the case. Wesbird, are you concerned at all that Arteta can be stubborn at times? Will play square pegs in round holes, which will be at the detriment to the team's fluidity? I absolutely think he can be stubborn. That's the quality of a lot of managers, to be honest. But square pegs, round holes, I think he's had a lot of success in doing things that people thought was wrong. A lot of people criticised him for putting Ben White at right back. Look how that's turned out. Not such a square peg after all. So I don't necessarily think so. I think that he can try things that don't work. But on the basis of this season, as I've talked about at length, and I'm not going to go into it again, there is a lot of evidence to suggest that we are still on the right path, despite him tweaking and experimenting in the first half of this, in the first 3 games of this season. It says, Tom, what's your honest thoughts on Ange Postecoglou at Spurs? I think he's the perfect manager for that squad as is right now. Now that they're not focused on Harry Kane and just what Kane does, they needed a manager that was always going to be a project, and that is what Ange Postecoglou is going to do for them. Seems to have a good mentality, good philosophy about football, and I'm very concerned. I'm not concerned for this season in terms of the longevity of this campaign and where Spurs end up. I think they will drop points. But my early indications is that he's been a good appointment for them. And, yeah, we'll see how that one turns out in the long term. I think that, to be honest, that Maddison's been a better signing than Postecoglou has been an appointment. I think Maddison is carrying them at the moment a bit. We talk about them being a team, but Maddison's been proved a very, very good signing. Indeed, he may prove me wrong in terms of the Havertz-Maddison scenario. So yeah, let's wait and see. Alison says, Tom, I do not understand why some fans are getting annoyed at that Smith Rowe has not received any game time. We've only played 3 games so far. It's a long season with injuries to come. He will get more games. I think it's not just this season, but the end of last season. He was fit for a lot of the end of last season. I was told, there wasn't a fitness issue and he wasn't being used from the bench. So I think, Alison, it's not just the first 3 games. It's the end of last season as well. I think he can be given more minutes. And I hope that I hope that you're proven right, Alison, in that we see more of him in what's coming as well. Ricky says, look at our upcoming schedule. If Arteta continues with this nonsense, we will be lucky to get to it. It's not nonsense because the evidence suggests it's not nonsense. The statistics certainly back up the fact that it's not nonsense. I will agree that it would be pretty silly, though, to play the team that we've been playing against Man United. And I want to see Partey in the middle. And I want to see White at right back and Zinchenko come in and Gabriel come in. That's what I want to see, So I'm on board with the Man United thing about the changing for the Man United game because I think you need to change depending on the opponent that you will face. But it's not nonsense what we've done so far. I think the stats and the numbers back that up. But yeah, certainly for the Man United game, I do want to see changes. Let's go to Kish says, Moussa Diaby seems to be a great signing. Would have been a great having him in our front line. He doesn't start for us, He doesn't start in our team. He's very good. I like him. But as we discussed when I did the kind of chat with Drew about Diaby, defensively, he doesn't fit what Arteta wants in a winger. He's perfect for Unai Emery. And I think people forget that when looking at signings, is that they don't really look at what the situation they're in and the context of the club that they've gone into. They just look at them individually and think, well, he's doing really well. He would have done great for Arsenal. But actually, he's a perfect Unai Emery winger. I don't think he's a perfect Mikel Arteta winger. But he's very good, and he's doing really, really well at Villa so far. And he's in my fantasy team because I knew he was going to do well in that Unai Emery team. Benji says, Tom, this is such a blow. He was so good in pre-season and great at the Euros. It seemed like he was priming to explode, and now there's links to a rival. No wonder people are upset. I can't blame people for being upset if Smith Rowe is being linked with a move away. I have absolute sympathy for people that are and empathy for people that are upset. And I'd be upset, really upset, if Smith Rowe leaves to Smith Rowe. Very, very upset. As I say, I think it would erode trust between the fans and the regime. A player leaving that's not been playing at all, but Smith Rowe going to a rival is that's up there with one of the worst decisions this club could make. It really, really is. Davey says, any chance that we bring in an attacker before the end of the season? What about Jonathan David? I doubt that Lille would allow that deal to happen this late. That's the issue with forwards and the players. That's why I said maybe January will be the time that we bring in another forward, because I just don't know if the options are out there that clubs would allow to leave at this stage of the window. So there you go. If he says, no, you all are saying the tactics create more chances. Why against the tactics of Man United now? Because it'll be suicide. No, it's not like that. That's a misrepresentation because the oppositions are different. Against Forest and Fulham and against Crystal Palace, these are clubs where you can take control, and having more attacking players on the field can give you more opportunities. And that's reflected in the fact that we've had more attacking scenarios compared to the average last season, and more of those attacking scenarios have led to shots compared to last season as well. When you go up against Man United, it's a different kettle of fish. And you tweak the team based upon the opposition you come up against. So, no, I wouldn't really attack people like that and laugh at people like that for suggesting that, making changes against Man United is highlighting that we know it's a mistake that it was played in that way in the first 3 games, because that's disingenuous to what ultimately it is. Let's go to Magambo says, we are too dependent on Odegaard. He has many off games, but Arteta just doesn't want to give Smith Rowe time. Odegaard is, when you say dependent on Odegaard, there's a reason for that, and that's because he's probably up there with being the best player in the team, So that's why we are very reliant on Odegaard, because he's one of easily the best players in this squad and very important to how we play. Let's go to Tok Roy says, the proceeds from the sale of Arsenal players immediately bring in Barella and Simican, and the January window brings in Evan Ferguson. Perfect. Yeah, if I knew it were that simple. It's almost like it's career mode, isn't it? I'm not massively keen on Evan Ferguson at the moment. That might change, but there's something about Ferguson I need to be more convinced by. At the moment, Danny Welbeck's starting a lot of games over him still. So, I need to see more from Evan Ferguson before I get on that train at the moment. CJ says Arteta can't get rid of Smith Rowe for PR reasons. If season goes bad and Havertz has a stinker, as most of us are expecting, then he will face a lot of criticism, especially when he, Smith Rowe, will do well elsewhere. CJ Dan, by the way, I don't think it's most of you that, by the way, are thinking Havertz is going to have a stinker this season. I think it's a very vocal minority. I think that, it's really easy to jump on social media and YouTube comments and be really slamming of Havertz, and it's a lot harder to be supportive when it seems like the vocal ones are being so critical of him. But actually, I think there is a huge number of people that are really excited about Havertz and waiting to see what he can do. So I think it would be, again, disingenuous to say that it's most of us are expecting Havertz not to do well. I think that's not correct in any way, shape or form. But what I do agree with is it would not be good for the club's image if they were to let Smith Rowe leave for a club like Chelsea. I certainly agree with that. Let's go to I'm not going to be addressing that topic, by the way, in the chat. It's a solid no. Chris says, if we remember why we lost to Manchester United in September last year, then you would understand why we should return to the default formation of Rice and Partey. I mean, look at how good Rice and Partey were as a combination against Man City. That was the type of game in which I want to see that formation used as well. We were much more competitive. We stayed in the game for a really, really long time, and so much so that we managed to somehow win that game. We created plenty of chances as well. It should be Rice and Partey in the middle. If it's not Rice and Partey in the middle, I'm going to be very disappointed, and I'm going to expect a very big performance and a justifiable performance for not starting those players. So yeah, let's wait and see. Let's go to Phil says, if Jesus is fit to start, are you starting him against United, or will you start? I think Nketiah should start. I think scoring again shows you that form is important here. Gabriel Jesus, can come off the bench. But him coming off the bench and scoring changed a lot for me. Like, that had been one of the big criticisms of Eddie Nketiah that I had, is that he came off the bench and weren't scoring. He wasn't impactful enough in those moments. Him doing that last game against Fulham really was a big, big cornerstone for me. And it was a really big moment for me in my view of Eddie Nketiah and changing the overall view for the future, is the fact he came on and did that. Such a clutch moment for his career in the short term, that yes, without a doubt, Nketiah should be starting the game against Man United on Sunday over Jesus right now. And Jesus will have to work his way back into the team. First couple of games, he didn't do enough for me to say, if Jesus is fully fit, Jesus comes back in. Yes, he scored against Forest in a game which he had 1-2 chances, and then obviously he missed those chances against Crystal Palace. And for me, Eddie Nketiah coming on in that moment was really important. Magalhaes says, they were a man down. They weren't a man down when Nketiah scored, right? They weren't a man down when Nketiah scored at all. So it was 11 against 11 when Nketiah scored. So yeah, I don't think that's relevant in any way, shape or form. CJ Jan says, have you come around, Eddie? No, not yet. I think, and I spoke to Eddie after the game in the Emirates Cup when he scored against Monaco. We spoke to him after that game, and a lot of the questions were, how do you feel about stepping in for Jesus? How do you feel about standing in for Jesus? And he needs to change the. And I was speaking to someone at the club about this as well, is that, we have to change. Like the conversation around Eddie has got to change, but he has to do that himself. He has to do that in his interviews. He has to do that on the pitch with his performances. He has to be the one to change the conversation. And he can do that by doing what he did against Fulham, which is coming off the bench, great movement, great finish, great goal. That's your contribution. Absolutely smashing it. And to come around on Eddie is going to be all about, is he be able to do this on a consistent basis? Is he going to be able to do it week in, week out, score goals? If he's on the bench, come off the bench, score, and change the conversation to, he's not back up to Jesus. He's a competitor for Jesus. That's his mission this season, is to put himself into a position in the eyes of me, fans, everyone, that he is not the number 2, is that he is a genuine option for that starting striker position. And he can only do that by taking the opportunities that he gets. And you can't say that he's not been doing that so far, because in the first 3 games of the season, he's had a hand in a goal in every game. He's either won a penalty or he's scored. So What more can you say about that? You know, fair play to him. And remember, the last time we played Man United at home, he scored 2, one of those being very late on and was very, very important indeed. Right then, let's round the show off there. Thank you so much, everybody, for tuning in. Very much appreciate your time, as always. I hope you're having a fantastic Tuesday, worst day of the week. So my best wishes of luck to you. I hope that you can make it through. I'm sure it's going to be fine. But thank you to everyone that's listened and tuned in. It's very much appreciated. I hope you have a fantastic day and stay safe, stay well. Drop a like on the video. It'd mean a lot if you could do that, and subscribe. If you're listening on catch up, leave your thoughts down in the comment section as well on YouTube to let us know on any of the things that we've discussed today, how you're feeling. I try to respond to as many people as I can. But thank you. And yeah, I'll see you again very soon. Have a great day. And as always, up the Arsenal.